Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the harmony with the universe. What is to be in harmony with the universe? This is a powerful conversation about trust, surrender, and learning to flow with life instead of fighting it. Our guest is Eamonn Sean Kneeland, author, spiritual coach, and meditation guide with decades of experience teaching radical trust. He shares a simple and transformative message. Everything always happens in your favor. And what if this is true? Together we'll explore aligning with divine flow, releasing resistance, and trusting life's unseen intelligence. Take a breath and let's begin. So welcome, Eamonn, which I'm proud to say my uncle Eamonn, who is accompanying us in this podcast. So it's a real pleasure having you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Santiago. I've been looking forward to it from a long while back. So thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited. So let us roll.
Perfect. So this is an interesting topic, and this is part of what you've been, I don't want to say conclusions, but the summary of your life, of how you've, your life experiences and, the meaning that you found in different situations. So in this first segment, which is called The Call of the Soul, we're going to talk about that every spiritual path begins with a call, sometimes through wonder, sometimes through loss. In this segment, we step into Eamonn's origin story, from sailing in the Pacific as a teenager to losing his father, and how that turning point became the doorway to awakening, purpose, and spiritual devotion. This is the journey of a soul answering destiny. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you grew up and your relationship, I think, and I knew your dad. You had a very close relationship, very particular relationship. So tell us a little bit of you growing up.
Well, my younger years were quite something. I can say that I had a wonderful upbringing with its challenges. We lived in Mexico City for a long while. I was there till I was 15. My dad, my mom got separated, they got divorced. And my dad, he was a seaman. He had the salt, the ocean in his blood from the start. From even before I was born, he had sailboats. He shipped out of the merchant ships when he was only 14 years old. And I had the opportunity when I turned 15 to move with him and live on his final boat. That was his third boat, who he had built so that he could round the world. His main challenge was to round Cape Horn, and he wanted to do 50-50. He wanted to go one way and then back the other and then through the fjords. And that was his passion. Sailing was his passion. And I had the opportunity to experience his last 6 years of his life with him. They changed my life. I was always into snorkeling and learned how to scuba dive, and I love fishing. I still do. And it was a wonderful experience. It was something that automatically took me out of the box. My dad had a sailboat in Acapulco, and we lived in Mexico City. Back then, it was about 6 to 8 hour drive. Now it's 3 hours or something. But we would go every weekend, and we, my brothers, my younger brothers and I, not younger than me, but the youngest of 10,
Yes.
would always
Big family.
yeah, big family, just like yours.
Yes. Yes.
And we would always complain because we wanted to, have the lifestyle that every other kid had, and we didn't. I missed. I didn't have prom. I missed uh, weekend parties because we always went to Acapulco and we spend the weekend there. We'd go sailing, we'd go snorkeling. I'd stay fishing till the wee hours of the night. But that was my upbringing. So automatically, right out of the get-go, I was pulled out of the norm. I was not
Yeah.
your regular kid, and neither were my brothers or sisters. But I was the last of 10, so I think I got into the tail end of that comet called my dad, and
Okay.
learned from it. I think it prepared me.
Okay. And this is interesting because, I mean, you're telling us about this younger years that you spent a long time in Acapulco, and your mom and your dad were still together, and you kind of had, family life and had that, that lifestyle. But suddenly, your life kind of changes. Your dad leaves, and he takes you and your brother to the Pacific. Basically, takes you out of school. You go with him in his sailboat and live in the ocean for I don't know how many years. So that is all. I mean, if before was being out of the norm, this is completely. I remember, you it was your dad with you guys sailing all over the Pacific. So tell us a little bit of that experience.
Well, it was wonderful. We started off from California. San Diego was the home port. We did a couple rounds to the Hawaiian Islands and back. He kept on trying to put together the perfect crew. He hired guys that went around the Whitbread, around the world, or a couple other, sailing, big sailing experience under their belts. But with all the experience comes ego, and he was not quite happy with how the cruise would turn out, and we would end up or coming back from Hawaii back to the mainland, or we would reach as far as Polynesia and then come back to the mainland. But then one day he got it, and he said, well, I'm not really going to look for guys that have all this experience and whatever. I'm gonna just bring in these guys that have are eager to experience something
Okay.
different. They're not really sailors. They've never sailed, but they're eager to experience, and they're grateful for the opportunity. And so he brought his two brothers-in-law. They were young, back in that crew. The oldest was 26. The youngest was me, and I was back then I was 19, 18. Um,
Okay.
and then we brought two friends of ours from our neighborhood in Mexico City, and they were city boys, and they were
Yeah.
not sailors, but they ended up learning the trade, and he loved that because they could learn his way. They didn't have their way and wanted to impose it into the system that he had already created. He was able to teach them from
Okay.
zero, from the start, and that allowed a crew that was prepared and ready to go the world around like he wanted. And so it took a while, but we headed down, I should say, to the South Pacific on our last voyage. I say last voyage because he got ill on our way down. We were sailing from San Diego to Easter Island, and then we were going to go, cut into Chile and do the Horn and all that. But he
Okay.
got off right now. This is like happening, but in retrospection, then you start. Okay, it makes sense. It makes sense based on what I've been learning, what I've been exploring, how I've been
Yeah.
expanding the consciousness. The doctors, because he was a guy, he was religious. You gotta underline that he was Catholic, and he was a praying Catholic, and he was faithful and devout. He was forgiven for all his sins, and so he was allowed to come back to the church, even if he was a divorced man twice. So he really was very grateful for that break they gave him, and so it impacted in his faith, and so he was a man of faith.
Okay.
Um, but then prior to heading down south, he got a cough, and he went to the doctors. He, explained he was gonna, take a long trip, and we were not gonna come
And
back
this
in
was just a parenthesis. This was the trip he'd been planning for all his life, going
for all his,
around the Horn, and he
yeah,
never that was that. Okay, got it.
this was his big chance. This is
Okay,
his big opportunity, and probably his last opportunity the way he saw it. I mean, he sailed. He was a treasure hunter. He did a lot of sailing prior to me even being born, but
yeah, yeah,
this was it. This was the la cúspide de la pirámide.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so um the doctor said, "Oh, just take, extra vitamin C. It's just a common cough. You can set sail, no problem." So we set sail, and 2 weeks into this South Pacific trip, his cough got so heavy that he couldn't keep a meal in. He he
Okay,
he, he was just not going anywhere with it. So we decided to turn back into Polynesia for the third time, and there he decided to go find out what was happening. First doctor said, "Oh, common cold, just drink lots of orange juice and lots of lime, and you'll be okay. And he wasn't convinced about that. So he flew over to the main island of the Marquesas Islands. This is in the Marquesas Islands in
Yeah.
French Polynesia. And they decided that he had to go check himself either in Tahiti or in Honolulu,
Yeah.
because this was not a common cough. He had pneumonia. They
Okay.
discovered that he had a lung filled with water. So
Okay.
we paused. He and his wife, his third wife, back then my stepmom, flew to Honolulu. He loved Hawaii. He had Hawaii in his under his
Yeah.
skin. So that I'm going to the U.S. because he was a patriot, and he was better off. He thought he was better off if he went to Hawaii. So
Okay.
he was there, and he got checked by the doctors, the pros, and finally came back with an answer. And the answer said was that he had cancer. He had pancreatic cancer, and it had already spread to his lungs and his brain. So immediately, the 10 of us, my brother and I, were in the Polynesian Islands. We, left the crew there to take care of the boat, and we flew to Hawaii. My other brothers and sisters from elsewhere flew to Hawaii and gathered with him. Sat with a doctor. The doctor really was quite honest. He said he's got 6 months of to live, or 5% over 100 chance to survive chemo. And so
So
my
it's
dad was very.
really, really bad
It was
news.
quite dim.
Yeah. 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 To say the least.
Yes. And so my dad, he was positive about it. And he says, well, I'm going to go for the chemo. You guys go get back the boat, go get the boat back over here to Hawaii. We'll, weather it out. And when I'm ready, we'll keep sailing. And, and I think in his soul, he was a wise man. And in his soul, he knew that he was going to go sailing, but this was a different type of sailing.
Okay.
Because my brother and I, my brother as totally went from being the first mate to being the captain, and so
Okay.
and he was only 21 years old. So we went back to the islands, and it happened to be in this. You're better in French than I am, but 14 juillet, which is the
14th
festivity.
of yeah, the take of the Bastille. The
Exactly. And they in Polynesia they really go out and celebrate. And so 6 weeks of party hardy every day. And so my brother and I couldn't really contain the information that we were given when we flew
Mhm.
back, and we joined the party. And that's another lesson,
that was the way that you kind of released your tension, right?
deal with it or avoided it, one or the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Okay.
So we, lost some time, and finally, 2 weeks later, we had to convene. I mean, we were almost having mutiny because the crew was partying hard as well, and there were three families. It was his two brothers-in-law, our two friends from Mexico City who were cousins, and my brother and I. So we had to really pull it together and really, rise to the occasion, and finally, we're able to leave Polynesia or French Polynesia and sail back to Honolulu.
Okay.
By that time, we had wasted 2 weeks. All right. So
Okay.
I remember when we were at sea 4 days into this trip, and so I remember we were heading back to Hawaii, and 4 days into the trip, we got on the ham radio a call from my stepmom saying your dad has passed on. So he passed
Really?
on. I was 20. My brother was 21, and he passed on while we were at sea. And I remember that day that we got the news. You try to grab onto whatever you can.
Yeah.
I saw the longest. I don't know if it was a shooting star, probably, but it covered the entire horizon. We're talking about deep sea. We're talking about no islands, no mainland, no nothing, just ocean, water, darkness, clouds, stars, just ourselves and the ocean. And that night, I remember seeing this huge, long tailed shooting star, like a comet. And in my understanding back then, I thought that was my dad saying goodbye. It was quite interesting. It was hard. It was a hard experience. And of course, we got to Hawaii, 6 months into partying. Our crew started dismantling, and everybody started going back home. And meanwhile, we're trying to find answers. And in my experience, and this is shared in my book, my recent book, Everything is Always Happening in Your Favor, which that's in Spanish. In English is That Deep Little Book. I explain my fast lane experience. I had heard at some point in the radio when I was in San Diego varnishing or sanding the boat, how there was this person who had died and his son died like 6 months later. And so I was
Okay.
open. I was open to that. I was open to catching up to my dad because at that time, my dad was everything for me. He was my
Yeah.
boss. He was my captain. He was my friend. He was my provider. Okay, so basically, I wanted to follow after him. He was everything for me, and I felt like he, there was nothing for me to linger for. So I started. I took the fast lane uh, for 2 years until I had
Okay.
a rock bottom experience. Now, before that, we had a beautiful aloha why to my dad. He had already written down everything he wanted happen with his physical body if he would pass on at sea, or he would. I mean, if he pass away at sea, or if he would pass away in land, to the point that he wanted exactly this type music play during his funeral. So we had a beautiful celebration in the Big Island of Hawaii. Your grandfather flew in to say goodbye to him.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of controversy behind that, but we won't get into details. His partner, my mom's brother, who was one of his sailors for a long time before they got divorced, and after too, a lot of people that really cared for him
Yeah.
joined, and it was a beautiful ritual. Us, the crew, we all did. We had handiwork made like seamen. We could do things with rope work, and he was addicted to coffee. He no longer drank. I was born, and 20 years after I was born, he hadn't had a drop of alcohol, but he had a sugar addiction. He loved ice cream and coffee. He
Okay.
replaced one with the other. And so I remember the gift I gifted him with in his departure was I had this really beautiful glass bottle. I fill it with Kona coffee, macadamia nut, which is his favorite. I knitted this net around it, like you see those floats, the fishing
Mm-hmm.
floats, and then between the net and the glass, I put a picture of his boat, and then I put a picture of my brother and I, and that was my gift to him when we scattered his ashes into the ocean and throughout our lace. I threw this beautiful gift, and
Okay.
everybody in the crew did the same. Some gifted him with the Hawaiian water, which was his favorite, which is a anyway, bubbly water, and so
Okay.
forth.
Yeah.
But his departure triggered my inner search. Uh,
Okay.
I was I was very religious. I would pray when I would go to bed. I would pray when I would get in an airplane. I would pray when I landed. I would pray right before I was going to eat. And I listened to the Bible on an audio tape. Back then there was tapes nightly. I was really devout. But I remember at sea, I just grabbed my Bible and ripped it in half and chucked it into the ocean. I said, you're not around. I don't understand why you took my dad. And I got into this rebellious
Okay.
path. Never got into the deep stuff, but yeah, I became a pothead and uh, loved beer and just like a sailor, And I was really angry against God or whatever back then meant that. And
Okay.
finally, 2 years of this, of just not caring and just living a life of plenty, I hit rock bottom. And when I hit rock bottom, your cousin, uh, extended his hand. I came and I told him I was experiencing this and I was out of my head and I couldn't come back and I was losing my mind and I he guided me into this new dimension where I went from religion to spirituality. Uh,
Okay.
and that's when I discovered that the master, uh, Jesus, didn't really live on a cross on my room. He was ever present, and it was up to me to allow him. And then I discovered that it was just not him; it was the Christ, and I either the Christ or the Antichrist. There was nothing external. I had the decision to allow this consciousness to be born within me because I died. I definitely died in that experience. I had a
Hmm.
what you would call a near death experience. I was out of my body. I was in this Grateful Dead concert. Some of you guys that will listen to this probably can relate in the sports arena, and I did excessive loads of psilocybin, and it's in my book. Um, and I could see myself from above. I mean, I left my body and I couldn't come back, and it was awful. And I discovered that this place, this arena where everybody was there convening, we were all
Hmm.
looking for, and this place was just there was no light to be found there. But not just the partiers, not just the deadheads, the security guards, the vendors, everybody was there as a pool of lost souls. That was
Okay.
my trip. That was my experience. But I really literally left my body and I couldn't come back. And I couldn't come back. And so this cousin of yours introduced me to, I knew classical music, but then I started to listen to it. I got acquainted with Krishna. I got acquainted with the Virgin of Guadalupe. Uh, I really got acquainted with them, and he introduced me to this book called The I Am Discourses. And
Okay.
when I opened the book, it was like this quivering energy just embraced me and spilled out of the book and expanded my horizons. And then the next day I said, well, this is too much for me. And then your cousin, my nephew, he said, whenever you come this high, don't come back down because that's when you lose your path. And I took it to heart. And so I opened myself to this new understanding and this new world that I was discovering. And little by little, I started learning about the masters, the ascended masters, and I started channeling myself toward that because that is what made sense to me. And
Okay.
and and that's how I started my path, my spiritual path. That's when I transcended dogma and opened myself to spiritual teachings. And now it's been what, 32 years from that experience. So
Okay.
now I can tell you that any path, any organization, whether it's spiritual or not, it's still a crib. Any book is still a crib. And we eventually grow out of the crib. We grow out of anything that is limited by putting the name God on something. You are already limiting that expression, that being, that consciousness. And it's been a path of self discovery, of quite really realigning myself with who I am and with beyond the universe, because the universe is something physical, material. And we talk about the universe and may the universe bless you and let's align with the universe. But really, we're aligning with something that's greater and bigger and wider than the universe.
Yeah. Beyond
And
beyond
within,
what we consider the universe, or what we know about the universe.
exactly,
Well,
exactly.
this is really interesting, and like, I mean, your story and what you're telling me is, I mean, you went through this process, which I think a lot of people can relate, of loss, and you got to a point where, as you were saying, that you wanted to go with your father. You wanted to um, die even. So it's interesting how you went from that into this new awakening or new realization about yourself. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.